Hey everybody, Michael Swaim here, and I'm doing it. I'm calling you to action. I am sincerely asking that if you're able, you'll check us out over at patreon.com/smallbeans, where if you upgrade to being a $5 a month or more patron, you get access to twice as many pods like Star Trek The Next Futurama, Spielboys, Director Piece Theater, and One-Upsmanship, and even more great stuff. So hey, come on in, the water's beans. Patreon.com/smallbeans. Can I start with an anecdote? We never do this, but I want to start with a little anecdote.
Fucking go for it, dude.
I think it'll set the stage for this, and then I'll intro us real quick. Griffin Rowell, recurring friend of the podcast, one of my oldest friends, had an uncle who worked for Area 51 and had top secret security clearance, and those things were both verifiable. Like as an adult, I verified that those things are true. But he would constantly tell us like, oh yeah, there is stuff. I can't tell you. I'll take it to my grave. But yeah, there's stuff. Yeah, there's stuff you'll want to know. And it's like, how much of that was just for our... But anyway, later in his life, he went nuts and he would do these binders, and he ended up doing one for every county in the entire United States, which there's like thousands. And then he started over and did it again. And it was just a binder that said like, the square footage of this county is this. The current mayor of this county is this. Like, he just made binders of what you would Google, essentially, you know, about an area. The geographical center is at this latitude and longitude. And he coveted them and loved them and filled his house with these binders over and over and over. And I just think that's appropriate to the movie.
That's a
that we're going to be discussing.
Just a story about
just a person,
just a person.
The boringness of the story and the boringness of what he was doing, the mundanity of it, and how much he coveted it. So let's intro.
Like a parade,
how important it was to him. Yeah.
This is Frame Rate where we rate frames. I'm Michael Swaim.
I'm Abe Epperson, and we have a guest today. Intro yourself.
Hello, I'm Cody Johnston.
Hey, you did it.
Yeah, because you all know Cody. Cody from Some More News, Even More News, the Jamokes or Bugs or Shapes, whatever your band is called now.
You know, that's the one.
At all. Cody's great band that more people should listen to.
You fucking cut deep just then.
And I'm not making it very easy to find.
Any of those three, actually, only one of those will actually work. The Hot Shapes is the name of the band.
Shapes.
Go check us out.
Hot Shapes is the name of the band.
I remember we were the Gross Little Bugs, but
that's right.
Yeah, that's the only one I recall.
The Gross Bugs,
right?
The Fantastic Little Guys or the Gross Bugs.
All right,
the
I'm out of the band again.
Little Guys.
Okay, this is too casual. Let's get into it.
I'm out of the band again.
Speaking of music,
we dive in and talk. It's true. Music is appropriate. Before we talk with Codes about True Stories, 1986's True Stories. I was 1 year old. We got to thank Jeff. This is the last of Jeff, as Abe put it. It's the last of you, Jeff.
Jeff's gone.
Yeah, we thank Jeff deeply for their picks, not assuming Jeff gender. But you can be like Jeff did and go to our Pick the Flick tier on patreon.com/smallbeans if you'd like to dictate what movie we watch and usually what guest we can pull. Although no one's trying to do it, just be like, you know, hey, get Tony Curtis. He's dead. Get him. You know, like, so far everyone's...
something impossible, you mean?
So far people have requested people they know we know, which is good that they haven't exploited that. Yeah. Mm.
Or we just choose for you and it's fine.
Or we
you don't have to come to us.
Yeah, the only thing you're legally entitled to is the movie pick. As we Jeff is, so let's get into
an
it.
apt person, which we did this time. Cody. You hadn't seen this movie.
I
had not seen this movie, no.
Okay.
What did you think of this movie?
I had a lot of thoughts about it. Well, maybe I only have a few. I enjoyed it. It's definitely very David Byrne, and it is funny at times. Got some really weirdo lines that made me laugh. And obviously the music is pretty good. You know, it's
pretty sick.
Yeah, pretty sick tunes going on in it. It's not the kind of movie you see a lot made generally.
True.
And there's I can imagine people watching this and being bored, although I was not, but I did enjoy it.
What was it? And you said your relationship with the Talking Heads was that
Oh,
you're pro David Byrne.
I'm very pro David Byrne, Talking Heads, and even the songs that like weren't performed by the Talking Heads in this movie, I was like, yeah, hell yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, they were all Talking Heads songs, but in a very ballsy move, almost I think all except one song, he gave way to someone else who is not an appropriate singer of the song in every case.
Yeah.
Like almost a Coen Brothers extra they pulled at random from the crowd because they have an interesting face, and they're like, you sing Psycho Killer now.
Yeah.
I know you're not right for it. That's the joy.
Yeah, there was just that one lip syncing scene for what was it? Wild Wild Life, I think is the one that.
Yeah, the karaoke one.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Which maybe my favorite song in the movie, but it doesn't matter.
I think mine is John Goodman's version of People Like Us.
The climax. The climax makes me choke up, but it's also there's a couple times where they do the music video bits, right, or the song sequences are like, let's have everyone in town sing it, or let's just have a bunch of different interesting types of people sing it on a rotating sort of like the then when they do it in the mall, it's suddenly a fashion show, but it's a fashion show for, I think, textures or matter. There's like rocks and trees and bark and
grass,
stuff like that.
There's grass dresses and stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love the beginning one where he's just like, this is a space. What happened to space? It was ocean, and then all of a sudden it was dinosaurs, and then it was Native Americans, and then it was white people.
Then it was Mexicans,
and now
and
it's
white
candy,
people, then,
and
so on.
microchips, and he's just like selectively choosing like David Byrne's version of geological time.
Right? Yeah, it seems random, but it's not. Yeah.
Adaptation. Right. He does the thing. Cut to the beginning of time. Something crawls from the muck. It sort of has that vibe, and it's always interesting to me because someone who is not mainly a filmmaker making a film, it's funny to me when they go, I guess I'll just start at the beginning of time. Like, this isn't the first time I've seen that, where it is a natural human instinct. Kurt Vonnegut, has a novel, Breakfast of Champions, is like, America was once blah, 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 following a space. Abe and I have talked about it because of City of God does it with a single apartment through time. And I actually really like that. I did want to quickly, and then I'll hand the stick back, but just for people who don't know at all what it is, I want to elucidate what we mean by David Byrne. Like, I love the Talking Heads. They're still in regular rotation when I listen to music. It's almost David Lynchy. It's another David who's weird, but it's not aggressively weird. It is how I would put it. David Lynch is aggressively weird. Like, look at that. That's pretty fucking weird, right? Is the attitude of his oeuvre. Right. Whereas David Byrne is almost anti-comedy weird in a way like, the astronauts didn't read poetry, but that's changing. And like, if you think that's funny, it almost overlaps with Christopher Guest stuff. If you think that's funny, you get it. If you don't think that's funny enough, I get you. Like, I get why.
Yeah.
You know who I couldn't stop thinking of this rewatch is the comedian Joe Pera.
Oh, sure. Wait, is he like, there's stuff in my drawers, or?
Oh,
he does
yeah.
He's the guy who, he's like ASMR. He explains, like, his show is like, Joe Pera talks to you, and he just has this voice where he just says, this is a thing, and I like this thing. Don't you like this thing? It's just a very kind of stream of consciousness, but also very calming.
Yeah, there's a calm cadence to it.
It's like a sketch show that doesn't need to be funny all the time.
Yeah.
It's almost like the jokes aren't the jokes.
And then, of course, as we said, it's punctuated by Talking Heads music. I don't want to do short shrift. Some of the jokes I think are funny, like John Goodman saying, it's like the song says, it's a scientific lifestyle. And he goes, I don't know that one. there's
at one point someone
stuff.
Says, did you fart?
God, yeah, so good.
That was the funniest
really
thing.
Funny.
To me, that was like a newspaper comic strip. There's a single shot that's just a couple wandering into the distance going, I love you. Let's go to that thing this weekend. And finally, when they're tiny dots, she goes, wait, did you fart?
It's so
and
good.
That's it. That's the whole bit.
I like the woman going up to the babies in the parade was really funny.
Oh, yeah.
Just like
Unhinged.
There's one line. It's whenever he's in the car, it's like this is the most David Byrne you could possibly get. Just like the calm. He said like. I forget exactly the comparison. It was like I was gonna say something about this, but I forget what it was.
I think I have it written down at home. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so good. It's like then don't put that in there.
It's just like you can cut that. What the fuck?
Don't include
It's a little John Watersy in that he legitimately loves camp and kitsch. And I forgot
kitschy,
that it's all in Texas, and it reminds me of that very special Texas sense of humor. I always talk about Happy Poet because it's an outstanding film. I don't mean that in the good way. I just mean it's an outlier. And then also King of the Hill reminds me of this sentiment, actually, where you just like present information and there's no wink at all. If you don't get that it's a joke, you're lost, and you think it's art that's trying to be pretentious. And sometimes it arguably is that, but I think most of the time it's a comedy. I think it's like an artsy sketch comedy film in a way.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but I don't know what I think about this movie, to be honest.
Oh yeah, before before rolling, you had a contentious point. It sounded like.
Well, it's not contentious. I love how he's not critical of things. There's a lot of things that he talks about in this movie where he's like, the capitalistic changes of the country has gone through this, and it's rooted itself even in our homes and communities. I love he has this like kind of off comment where he goes like, the mall is replacing the center of the town. This is now where we congregate. But the way in his performance and the way in which David Byrne kind of relays this information as the narrator, he's not critical of this. And we kind of now, just because we're in 2023, we see these statements as kind of like, well, yeah, and then he's going to kind of say something about the cruelty or the problems of the world, or like how it's a byproduct, like capitalism is like has these byproducts.
Presenting things. He's not.
I mean, he even filmed it.
Just observational.
He filmed it in Texas because they had the right to work laws.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Like it's like a whole different era, and like obviously there is no implicit like or explicit like very like articulated critique of this world at all, or like these whether the lifestyle or like all the mall stuff. He's loving it.
Well, that also reminds me that is very David Byrne. He did a song Nothing But Flowers where he talks about like this used to be, I mean, it's basically part of the opening scene of this movie. This used to be flowers and shit. City of Dreams. He loves this trend, I'm realizing now as I say it. This used to be dinosaurs here, but now it's a mall. This used to be flowers, but now it's a mall. It's always a mall. And what's funny is I do think it's non-critical because I've read interviews where he says, I think cityscapes are actually beautiful. I think the mall is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Economics is spiritual. Like he's connecting these dots and he's not satirizing them. So when you say something like, if you don't really catch the comedy, you're just going to see this as weird art. I don't know if I agree with that because one, I'm very much in the camp. Like I didn't know who David Byrne was until maybe I was 25. And like, so I didn't grow up with him. I have zero nostalgia for him.
For Talking Heads.
And that by the mere fact that I didn't know that, I don't know who he is, and he's just coming in talking about nonsense. Like it's like half of me is like, this is kind of like The Room. Like the Tommy Wiseau film where he's just like got a bunch of people. No, I don't know if it's bad. He's observational. He has a point. I guess I just mean that it's just like no one's clear on what the assignment is.
It's not a normal
because I don't
movie.
think David Byrne has an assignment. He's just going in saying this is cool stuff I want to show, and I think there's something wholesome about it. It's
almost like a wholesome garage sale of a pretty interesting weird artist who's like, they gave me a movie deal, so I'll show you some stuff. It's not meta. I'm not commenting on the stuff. Here's some stuff.
Yeah, no,
it was pretty neat.
Like, this is neat stuff. This is stuff I like.
Like Marge with the potato.
An aesthetic I'm attracted to, or whatever. Because it's just for people listening. It is like the title is True Stories. It is based off of like newspaper clippings from like tabloids that he'd collected like on the road. So so like all these little snippets are like, oh yeah, I saw this article with this headline about this person like never got out of bed or whatever. It's like, wouldn't it be neat if these were true and they were all in the same place? So it's just like, yeah,
Exactly.
wouldn't that be neat to see?
So he just made a
and he did it,
town
yeah.
where a bunch of human interest stories happen simultaneously, and in between there are Talking Head songs. It's a complicated thing for what it is, honestly.
It's a slice of life fictional documentary. And it's like, so because of that, it's my big thing is that it's like one of it's so rare in movies to have a propagandist film or non-political film where you're like, I don't have a point.
Yeah.
This doesn't have a point.
It's
and
as close as you can get.
Yeah. And so because of that, that's one of the reasons I don't feel like it's even, you can categorize it with things like comedy. I mean, you can definitely with music, because what makes a musical is
structured
just
like a sketch
music.
movie, I guess, is my point, because they even do the second beat where they're like, it's different vignettes that have recurring jokes, like that woman who's always bragging, and then she brags that she like knew Rambo and had Rambo's life and shit yeah. And then at the end they intersect, right? Lewis, the lonely guy, marries the lady who's always in bed, and now they're the couple that's always in bed. So it kind of reminded me of like the 10 in that way, where they're he's just building games. He's just building games with elements.
But he's not playing with like comedy. Plays with expectations and says like,
interesting spoilers. I really like this movie, or like it's a vibe.
I really like
for
this
me.
movie too. I think it's like more akin to like an ASMR video.
It's
than
really
a movie,
vibey, yeah.
Which I don't mean that to be derogatory. I just think like he is not a comedian. I think David Byrne just came out of his egg sack exactly this way. Like he's just weird.
Yeah, there's actually for folks who aren't super familiar with him, other than like, you know, Psycho Killer, just like a couple Talking Head songs, maybe Stop Making Sense,
Burning Down the House.
Like, you know, their live show movie you can watch, which is also
right, the
very good. But there's this story that I think kind of elucidates the kind of person he is. From Brian Eno. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this story. I'm just going to read this quote from Brian Eno. He, David Byrne, is a genuine eccentric. He's always been exactly like that, and I've seen him remain like that in quite extreme situations. For instance, we were mugged together once in New York. It was quite frightening. We were mugged by 14 people. My enduring memory is of David being dragged off into the bushes saying, "Uh-oh!" That's absolutely true. It was like a cartoon scene.
Oh,
that is David Byrne.
We're part of a thing.
Oh,
it's a happening.
Like, it's so perfect.
He's like a halfway mix between Pee Wee Herman and David Lynch, is what he feels
yes,
like.
That really is it. That's very accurate. So good.
It's really endearing how, like, no matter what's happening around him, his whole thing is he would stare into space and be like, that cactus is the shape of a man's head. And
exactly.
Like, what's going on with you?
Are
David
you here
Byrne?
right now?
Yeah.
Dude, what the fuck, dude?
I was wondering,
how Brian Eno kind of
Yeah.
phrases that story too, is from he's almost like an observer of that fucking weirdo in the corner over there doing his own thing. Like he's not judgmental either. He's just like, this is who this guy
that
is.
was
Right,
the image that
exactly.
stuck with me.
I think he
Yeah.
inspires it in all of us, right? Like after I was mad at this movie a few times because I was like, this is, why the fuck are we doing this?
when it
You
just
know?
meanders around.
And then but then 5 minutes later, I'd be like, this is a great movie. I love this movie so much. This is just a vibe,
also,
you know what I mean?
As is so often the case when you get someone who only kind of knows what they're doing or doesn't care what they're doing or isn't
Right.
trying to make the name for themselves in film, they're just doing
Exactly.
something interesting. You'll get really provocative images that stick with you for no particular reason you can elucidate. But I'm just like the I never got his name, but the guy in the Mexican band who is psychic and reads people's vibes, fucking in the circuit board factory, hitting on the woman next to him, playing guitar with it's just like an interesting thing to look at. You know what I mean? There's something weird about it.
Yeah,
and
there's a very unique
captivating
image,
about that little guy. Every time they brought that guy back, I loved it. I'm like, there's my guy.
Apparently, so this whole movie, like, it shouldn't exist. So it's just interesting, like, sort of how it happened. Like, the original writers of the movie, one of them is Ned Ryerson.
I saw that. Stephen Tobolowsky.
Tobolowsky. And he got together and was like, yeah, I want to do this movie, and, you know, based on these stories and stuff. And so they wrote a draft and gave it to David Byrne, and they didn't hear from him for a year. And it came back, and it was just completely rewritten. And he was basically just like, "Can I put your names first, just so it doesn't seem
And
like
for
it's
listeners
David
who don't
Byrne?"
know,
Oh, interesting.
this is like an improv actor, and his main credits are a supporting part in Groundhog Day and Sonic commercials, like the fast food chain.
Yeah, you know him when you see him.
Yeah,
for sure.
but he's not even that
But-
notable. He's that guy.
Yeah, he's that
and
guy
it
from the
is
thing.
his vibe is totally not this vibe, which is fascinating.
Yeah. But apparently the tone guy came from a story that he told David Byrne about himself.
Oh,
Like
that
an
he used
experience
to read
had.
people's
And
tones?
so that's like this
Or he
new
knew a
draft
guy.
came in. It's
Okay.
like, wait, I'm in this now too.
Nice.
Just thought that was interesting.
surprising that he's not even in the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, did anyone, when he does the car stuff, it reminded me the most of all, because Abe said it didn't scan as a comedy at all times. Did that not remind you of Jack Handy's Deep Thoughts? It reminds me of
Yeah.
that more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but like Jack Handy has a ambition to make you
To
laugh.
make a joke.
right.
Yeah, Some of them are funny. This is funny. These freeways are the cathedrals of our time, some would say. Not me. That's funny. Come
That's
on.
funny. It is funny.
Is that-
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's.
I mean, like, no,
Jack
that-
Handy
I
through
will-
and through. He might add something to it, but yeah.
Look,
I laughed many times during
look,
this movie.
I
It's
personally
funny.
believe I can see Fort Worth from here. That's
Oh,
funny.
that was one of my favorite lines. I laughed out loud. I love that. I personally believe I can see Fort Worth from here.
That's like Peggy Hill saying,
So
in my
good.
opinion, Thanksgiving is the busiest shopping day of the year.
Exactly. It's so good. But it's even like more objective thing. Like, no, you can't. You can, you can
No,
see it. Of course.
That seems like a perfect joke, but also my big question, just by watching the man, like, I don't know, walk around the space, I'm like, do you think you're as funny as I think you're funny?
Which is
my
like
big
a
question.
4 out of 10. Yeah.
Right. Do you think you're a 4 out of 10? Do you think you're not even on the scale? Yeah.
Well, it's like, in that event, were you trying to go for that joke, or were you not? That's the big question that I have about.
Right. Was this
him.
just sort of? Is this how you talk? Is this
Well, because, right,
thing
because
you?
a line I also wrote down, stores here are pretty clean. The air is fresh. There's plenty of parking and space to walk around. So you're like, do you know what jokes are? Because that's just lines. You know what I mean?
Right.
It'll go back and forth.
But if,
I mean, I
but if
think
he
he
said it
does
a
know.
different way, like almost
Yes.
like a slightly different way, be like, oh, that's a really funny joke that he did.
But he refuses to say it like a real person.
Or he'll do the classic millennial humor thing, which is he always calls it the celebration of specialness. He puts the wrong
Yeah.
emphasis on the wrong
Yeah.
syllable.
Yeah.
We love that joke. That's our generation's joke.
It's amazing every time.
See, this is something that I think if we covered The Greasy Strangler, which is another
I
film
knew it
that
would come up.
I really suggest that no one ever watch. I cannot.
Just watch the scene where he dips his finger in the pig man's nose hole. If that is too much for you, then don't watch it.
Yeah, it should be burned. But it's
David
like
Byrne.
that movie makes me angry. It makes me angry because it does the same kind of decisions, and it has this expectation that I understand, or I think it's funny because I'm on the same brain wavelength. And I'm like, I don't owe that to you. You didn't earn that, filmmaker. I'm not on your brain wavelength. What David Byrne does is he's so wholesome and such a vibe, and he's just like, let's just ride it out, baby. This is great. That I'm like, he lulls me into this sense of like, I don't care. Like he kind of, like when you're playing a video game and you're like, sometimes I have to like just turn off because if I care about this video game, then I'm going to lose and I'm going to get agitated and I'm going to care about all the wrong things and not have a good time. But then a switch turns on and all of a sudden you're just like, I don't care what happens.
It's just a
I'm just
video
going to have
game.
a good time.
You just
baby.
go there for the
And
ride,
then you
yeah.
have the greatest time. David Byrne is that to me.
He's the switch.
Does that make sense, or am I just being a David Byrne?
No,
right
it
now?
makes
No,
sense.
that makes sense. Yeah.
But I think
Okay.
it is layered with stuff that's legitimately, well, only once or twice, but once or twice it feels like he's reaching for something that's an actual like conceptual art piece. Like the one that really comes to mind is the dad
Yeah.
talking about how Vericorp is bringing the town to life, and then he starts using the food as like a religious thing and
Yeah,
like a diagram.
that's true.
And
Oh,
he goes,
yeah, yeah,
excuse me, Mr. Culver, I forgot what these peppers represent. So it's almost like It's like a performance art thing that you would see in an installation space with one joke at the end.
Right.
And it's composed like The Last Supper, and at the end, like
And his children are making little statues.
the
with
lights
the food.
fade out and stuff like that. It's all very
It's super
biblical,
artsy and
the way
biblical.
he's speaking like a prophet. At halfway through his monologue, he starts turning into like his speech becomes more like a sermon.
Yes. And amidst this other like mini sketch where he and his wife don't talk to each other. Like
right.
it's
I forgot.
Like that's a funny bit. Like for the first
funny.
like 2 minutes of the scene, it's like this is funny. This is like really a funny little sketch.
Yeah, the
that you're
rule
doing.
is no one can talk to anyone but the person next to them at the table. Seems to be this family's rule. Yeah. Go
also,
ahead.
side note that one song, was it Puzzling
Evidence?
What was it? Puzzling Evidence. That dude was cooking.
That's
like,
what I was
you know?
just piping up to say. That dude ruled. The Puzzling Evidence, dude. He put so much
good.
work in.
Yes.
And I was listening to the song. I was like, man, he's not wrong.
Right, but then that music video, such as it was we just zoom in on the screen behind the preacher and we look at a bunch of trippy stock footage. So sometimes I was like, you could have tried harder. The concept wasn't really there. It presents you a lot. It's got a lot going on for only 90 minutes. And I do think some works and some doesn't.
Yeah, it's definitely a mixed bag. I think it's same with like some of the lines where it's like, this line is actually like watching it. I was like, this, if I watch this again and like really remembered these lines, they'd be some of my favorite jokes, maybe, just because they have that sort of wry, like nothingness to them in a little bit. But then some of it's, just like not going to work.
Well, and then some of it, like, let's talk about the origins of the kiss and cookie. And if you don't remember what I mean, there's a section that's called architecture. So there's a chyron that says architecture. And they talk about how Texas produces a bunch of metal.
By the way,
right, that's what I mean. It ends up having nothing to do with architecture. It's the lady who stays in bed and watches TV. And we end up getting a music video for Love for Sale. Great song. But at one point, she goes, a kiss and cookie. And it cuts to an image on TV of a puppet that's a cookie with lips kissing the screen. So that means they had to have the idea for the kiss and cookie and decide it was so important that someone fabricated that puppet. And I don't even understand what that moment is or means. Like, did anyone get anything out of that?
I did not.
But it's a barrage of those things. It's so many of those.
Exactly, yeah.
choices.
And some of it, it's like, that's perfect for that moment. Like, I know exactly what's being said there. And sometimes, like, I don't even think that you knew what you were saying here.
I don't think you knew. And I also think that there's an additive effect. In the aggregate, the barrage of nonsense becomes something else. It becomes this sensual overload of like wholesome Americana and like small town oddness. You know what I mean? Shopping is now our pastime, and I'm like, we're on to something. He's gonna go into shop. He's gonna go.
But he's like, no, and it is delightful.
Shopping's
like,
and
it's good.
Yeah.
That lady, her singing was not as strong. I didn't like the rendition of
the fashion show song. What she's doing? Yeah.
I mean, I don't. Hopefully she doesn't hear
there were a
this.
few moments
Sorry,
where I was like, "Ooh, that's
Dream
not,
Operator."
Dream
You
did a great
Operator.
job. Yeah. I also just have to say the preacher, doing his joke at the talent show at the end. Incredible work from that man. The gestures he was doing the whole time with his hands and like his weird way of standing. It's like
like a bird.
What? It's so uncomfortable. Like where he's like trying to tell the joke and he's like clearly like.
And you're wondering, is it fake sign language? Is he doing like a fake version of sign language?
Or is it just like you're not a public speaker, so you're awkward, but you're a preacher. So is it just like in this context you don't know how to do this?
Well, this is all intentional because that's Spalding Gray, who is like a performance artist. He does monologues like this shit, and this was like a form of art that everyone liked in the 80s.
It's the thing. It's so funny.
See, and there's overlap with Kids in the Hall too. They would do those monologues where you're like, I'm just an alley cat. I'm gonna do a weird monologue, and you're gonna think it's a joke just because it's weird. I love at the end, just because it's right by the notes are next to each other. At the end, when David Byrne like almost retroactively reveals that the cowboy outfits he's worn the whole movie are nothing to him. He goes, I'm really starting to get used to these cowboy outfits. They sell a lot of them, but I don't see anyone else wearing them. So you're like, wait, what? That's not his thing? That's just how
You
good
didn't choose it?
Yeah.
Did you choose it?
Yeah.
How do you get dressed in the morning?
Well, because he's visiting this place, so he's like, well, I'll get what the locals are wearing. So he goes to the store, gets what he thinks they are. He's like, well, no one else is wearing this. Same thing with the car. It's like, this is not a rental. Or like
right. So. Or the guys doing the, what do you call it, auctioneering voices. And it's David and Lewis backstage, and he goes, I could talk that fast. And he goes, nah.
I don't believe you. Like when he was in when he was in like red shirt and red pants, and he was like a band member suddenly. Right. Because I don't think of instinctually David Byrne as that, because of just like not having David Byrne in my life for so long. It felt weird. It almost felt like David Byrne belongs in a cowboy hat. Like you don't,
right?
And so it's almost like that's what I mean. Like he really is an alien, because it's like, I can't now knowing that fact, I don't know what he would.
I also was able to accept him as a cowboy immediately. I'm like, I guess he's always been a cowboy, I guess.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh no, you're like an artist, so you'll wear whatever thing you're doing, like a Lady Gaga or something.
And
he's so
like unique and odd, but like understated. That at the same time, like over the top understatement, which is like a very weird line to be in. So there's no sense of like, what if you were just like, I'm gonna get dressed today, what would that look like?
Yeah.
Like there's no like, this is David Byrne the person, as opposed to every other version we've seen of him.
Right. Are you for real?
He's like this weird chameleon. Yeah, exactly.
There's some people that I've met. That I'm like, I'll always try to find, especially because they're actors and like doing their thing or whatever. You meet actors who that you kind of like hang out at a party or whatever, and I'm like, oh, you're on 100% of the time. I now see it. It's a defense mechanism or whatnot, or you just like to make people happy or whatever.
And then there's the
or
rare
uncomfortable
treasure,
or whatever it is.
The person you meet where you go, oh no, you're genuinely like this. I love
this
you.
This is you.
You're a maniac. Yeah.
You are just a maniac. Usually people are just real when the lights are off. And then there's this other thing. And then there's this third thing that frankly comes from the moon.
Exactly, yeah.
And David Byrne is a part of that group.
And you're like, oh wait, the lights are always off for you.
Yeah.
Or are you always on in another way?
Lights are always
Are
on.
you always on so hard that you also are on for yourself? Like you, that's
right?
all
You don't know. There's no distinction between lights on and lights off, or it's just like, no, this is just
God is
watching. Which is such a hard way for me to live, because I overthink everything, and I think like, well, what is expected? How am I expected to be? Or these questions creep in and determine my activities and what I spend time on and how I kind of seek happiness. I'm like, how do you determine these things? Are they the same? Because you're making me think like you just do your thing.
What's funny about famous weirdos is, there's a bunch of guys who are dyed in the wool, and gals, OG weirdos, who are not rich, famous artists. Like when we think about your David Lynch's and Burns and Tom Waits's, it's really cool that they just were crazy, and their craziness made them a famous artist that's like legendary. I don't think that's what happens to every weirdo.
And it is not. Yeah,
you're right. It's just weird. I mean,
but
it's tough.
It's almost like a fairy tale life for David Byrne to just. I mean, his music is great, so I feel like, but it seems like he has genuinely always just done whatever he thought was interesting and succeeded beyond measure for it, which is great. We need people like that. Like these give us the weirdos that sometimes weirdos need power. You need a 1% of movies that are that.
Right.
Really believe
and
that.
that like there's something going, like obviously like you're saying, like the music is very unique and amazing, but there's other stuff there too. It's not just a weirdo in a band either, which a lot of like musician weirdos, I feel like, oh no, it's this is the music, but he like transcends that medium and it's like, no, I'm weird purely all life, all mediums, I'm going to be like this.
Agreed. Which it also reminds me of Bjork. Bjork will dabble in every medium and is like, it's always tastes like Bjork though. always. You
Exactly,
can't
yeah.
get that stink off it. And he does it. Part of it is doing, like, he doesn't just do jokes. He does lines that are like a joke, but they're insightful, like it's like a nugget of insight. I mean, he saves the best for last. At first I notice everything about a place, but then I get used to it and the feeling goes away. So I love forgetting. It's only by forgetting we can see something again as it really is. You're like, oh, okay, so that's pretty resonant and insightful. And so I think that's part of what makes it feel weird. It's like a guy came up to you and he sat on a whoopee cushion and then he said something mundane about the weather and then he said something really insightful and you're like, what's your deal, man? What are you trying to do to me?
Pick a lane, bro.
Yeah, what journey did you want me to go on here?
Right. He's like some fucking
He's like,
clown
all of it,
yogi.
man.
Exactly, yeah. But also like a boring clown yogi.
Yeah,
where it's
boring
like, you
clown
know.
yogi who makes really good music.
But just like that, like, yeah, clown yogi's like eating a bowl of soup.
Just let me play you a song. You're like, God, I don't want to listen to this. And then you listen to it and you're like, that's pretty good.
That's pretty fucking good.
I believe the band that the song that the Mexican mariachi rock band plays with the dude with the eye patch and the accordion, who also is just awesome casting.
Radiohead?
Hey, Radiohead. I believe that's the origin of the band name Radiohead.
It is, yeah.
I love that so much because I just
That's
love
what
the
a
idea
fan
of Tom York.
Tom York is.
Like the child in Poltergeist hand on the TV watching this movie. Tom York, you weird ass alien. It's just, it inspires other
alien
aliens.
solidarity. Exactly.
I will say on the music front, David Byrne also has a song called Mr. Jones that's much better than the Counting Crows Mr. Jones, so check it out. My dad had a textbook of rock and roll musicians that was like 1,000 pages long, and I used to read it all the time. And the Talking Heads were classified as punk, and I would say they're so unique that I don't even know that you can call them. I don't know what I would call their genre, like alternate or indie is all I can come up with. If you're listening to this and you've never heard the Talking Heads, they're very unique sounding for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's one band. That's the thing.
And
like,
his voice
why
is.
they
You're
stand,
like, that's his voice.
His voice. Yeah. But even like so many of the songs in this movie where he's not singing, I was like, that is the instrumentation of a Talking Heads song.
Yeah.
Which is also very unique. Which is why I do think punk is somewhat apt, just because of the vibe and the attitude of it. Of just like, no, this is what it is. We're not, but like also like, I don't know, generic rock, but like the Talking Heads is like a genre kind of itself.
A little bit, I feel like.
A little bit.
Yeah. What was the other song that was super, super good? I mean, I like Papa Legba, but I had to grow up and see the movie a few times to like Papa Legba. There's also songs. There's Talking Head songs that feel denser and harder to access for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they can be a challenge.
A lot of hypersaturated color environments I noticed, which I like. It's not a hard thing to do, but it is always pretty. Colors are pretty. You know what I mean? Like you would do the like bright yellow frame with a red. Everything's hypersaturated red inside the frame. And the frame is like some piece of concrete that just has a yellow light across it. Really love a lot of color play, which I like. I like bright colors.
Yeah.
I don't like when film does that super desaturate. Like whenever we have a movement of desaturated movies, I'm like, eh.
Right.
Yeah.
They made this. They did this as Criterion Collection a few years ago, and the remastering is amazing. Like it really does not look like a 1986. Archival stuff. Even the print is very nice, and there's just some breathtaking shots of just like, it's like the warped low angle shot of a gas station where you remember the shot because it says very clearly, $1, gas, and you go but that shot is like cinematography in this movie at times, like before it gets into the meat of the movie where it's just people talking in rooms and it's more of the sweeping spaces of like, this is Virgil, Texas. Some gorgeous photography of like the
reminded me of Breaking Bad, just good vistas.
A lot of like
static
painting shots where it's like that's just an image that you've put up
right
there.
Which I think that's why he puts, like, I think he put up like the super you mentioned with like it says architecture and stuff like that, and there's that sequence where it's like very much so talking about the highway situation, I think it's because, like, not only do I think that the reason that that's there is because he probably watched a lot of technical movies and documentaries, you know, like ones made by corporate America that are like, and you know, tomorrow
And here
we're
we
making,
see the
yeah,
rivets
and those
being-
all
yeah.
because he's doing that kind of thing a little bit, but like
Little
the
bit.
Definitely
photography
beginning, yeah.
of like how he's showing the landscape of America and how it prints itself upon, like we are printing on the land our capitalism. Like he is so into that. He loves that human. He's just like go human go, but he's also enamored with like how it physically looks. Like I think he's the kind of person who's really going to want to, like he's probably really into fractals, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
he's like this looks like this looks like
This
this
on top
'cause
of this
he
on
is
top of
very
this, yeah.
aware of that in the spatial geography of this movie. Things do look like each other even though it's really subtle. Like he likes to show boxes, and then he likes to show boxes and
Right. Every time we cut back to setting up the stage, it's a new, very interesting take on what is it to be a 3D box.
right.
Mhm,
And like even the beginning of the movie, he literally steps through, like after he does his little informational movie about Virgil, Texas.
Hey, it goes kind of behind the curtain screen.
He
The
goes
movie
into
steps
the
through the
movie.
screen, yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Last Action Hero in reverse. What's funny is there's no effect; they just slit the screen and he just pushes through it.
Right,
Yeah.
they didn't even bother. It's like, yeah, this is all you need. You know what's going on here.
You got to perceive it as an outside observer, kind of like a scientist.
Think about them in the way that he introduces the movie, where like you see this right now, but what I want you to do is think about 50 years ago, 100 years ago, a million years ago, and like what brought us to this point where these things are in this image.
Well, and it's scrupulous because he's not even judgmental. There's no way to know. You can assume that he's judgmental. You can assume that he thinks raping and murdering is wrong just because he's human. But if you didn't assume that, there's no way to know that. He's not even judgmental about the genocide. You know what I mean? He just goes, then the dinosaurs came. Then natives came. And they fought each other. And the Mexicans came and pushed them off. But the Americans came and pushed them off. And everybody murdered each other. But there's no even wink of like, and that's bad. He just says stuff. Again, he just presents things. And there is a quiet power in just presenting things and going, I'm not even saying anything. I'm just presenting it.
Yeah,
I'm just
have-
I'm just Wikipedia over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bizarre because that's the other thing I guess I was going to ask you guys is that like it's almost to me it is observational, but there's times where he talks about especially manufacturing and kind of the modern America where that he's so enamored with like cars and, you know, assembly lines and stuff like that that it almost is borderline reverence that he actually I think thinks capitalism is a great thing.
I think he thinks human endeavor is really cool, and he genuinely
Right.
thinks it's amazing that, like, you might see the bad side effects, which are climate change and blah, 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 and I'm sure he doesn't say those are good things. But he sees a giant parking garage that you might find depressing and is able to think, look, we used to just be monkeys or fish in the sea, and now we can make a parking garage. And like, that's an interesting take too. I can see that, that point
exactly.
of view.
Yeah,
on
like
things.
that's like looking at that image and it's like, oh, this mundane parking garage. But what he wants you to do is like all that went into that, not just like mixing the concrete and like building the thing, but like all the progress that needed to happen to figure out how to do those things. And ship those things here and here, and like every single moment that led to that existing, I think is what he's really like celebrating.
I think there's a reason the final song that it's climactically builds to after John Goodman, like the credit song, is City of Dreams. We live in a city of dreams, meaning like, you are born into a world that only exists because a bunch of other people already did stuff that their dreams and their desires like led them in life to reach whatever heights they reached, and you get to start from there.
Right. Yeah. You're
On this topic, there's this one section that I wanted to point out and just get your thoughts on it. And it's in the sermon of the Gray monologue with the family, where he starts talking about the workers and the people who are a part of the company creating new fascinating aspects of life and new inventions. And then he says he has this little aside where he talks about basically that people aren't doing their job just because they're paid. They do it because they like it. And it's become blurred for them. They don't know. It's almost like they're not even doing the company because they're getting something from the company.
It becomes their calling, right?
Yeah, the progress that they're working towards. Yeah.
Like he's very much a conundrum when it comes to that because he seems to hold some kind of reverence, and I don't think it's satirical. I don't think we're supposed to laugh at this man saying this. I think we honestly are taking David Byrne at his word.
Does that mirror his politics? Like, is he weirdly centrist or right-leaning? I wonder. But
yeah, I don't understand because they're both things that can be true.
Does he love the invisible hand of the free market? You know, I wonder.
Yeah, it feels like he does, but it's even more than that. Just to be almost like, I don't think he would be like a shill for like a company.
I doubt it.
I think he's very anti-corporate.
Like, I think, okay, and when he does The Lady in Bed is Watching, Love for Sale, they do a generic parody of commercials, just commercials. It conflates car commercials, candy commercials, and soap commercials. It's like an ad for all three at once. So I think he's literally parodying advertising. So there is something inherently mocking in parodying something, right?
Yeah, I think so much of the movie is just sort of tone and vibes. Well, there's also stuff like it's hard to parse because also he has talked about like capitalism and socialism like later on, but that doesn't mean that's where his views were when he was like making this movie,
right?
Or like how he viewed these things, and then 30 years later, what does the world look like? Do you still have this sort of reverence for it?
And this is the problem with famous weirdos. At the end of the day, part of you wonders, and is that real? Is that really what he really thinks, or is he doing a thing?
Yeah, I think there's always that on top of it. I'm just interested to see, and obviously, like you said, Cody, time would change any formula. But like, it's interesting that he comes out with that. Like he's saying they like, what's the point of saying that? And what's the point of having reverence for that? Like maybe, I don't know. The other thing is that he like kind of came up and lived through formatively the 60s, which is known as that era of like, every day they were inventing a new thing, a new gizmo was on the market.
Exactly. This time period too is that sort of like the tail end of this era where like it does seem like everything's getting better. We're making all these new stuff. What are microchips now? Like, you know, all this kind of
microchips are a miracle too. Like you can't argue with
stuff. Exactly.
Don't get it twisted.
And so
we can make a computer. We can take matter that's stacked around and oriented in such a way that it's a computer, and I can play video games on it. That's incredible.
Wild.
Less than
life.
100 years ago, we were baffled by light bulbs, and now we have microchips.
Like Call of Duty 9 or whatever.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So I think there is a sense, and you know, some people do have jobs today that are in that realm where it's like, yeah, I'm really passionate about this. I think it's exciting to be working on this kind of thing. So it's not, yeah, I get paid for it, but it's not like a job. And I think this era was a lot easier to sort of paint everybody as having that vibe, especially in like, it's not, you know, he's not talking about like, oh yeah, all these Walmarts are popping up and everyone's so excited to work. No, it's like talking about like, yeah, they're building stuff.
Yeah, it's really funny because the last frame rate that we did was on Bowling for Columbine, and we had Katie Soul.
We'd like to pair you guys in a row,
but it's just like these couldn't be the two different movies. One is insanely propagandist. This almost seems like it's avoiding making a statement, or the reverence it has is a reverence for, like, a positive reverence for humanity. Like, look,
it's almost apolitical.
Yeah, it's like, this is great. We're all great, which I guess could be a political statement of you know, privilege, but also it's not trying to break down any walls, not trying to.
There's so many neutral statements.
Give you a message.
I think music.
Yeah, it's not really nudging you.
I think music
anyway.
is sweet, and if it's sweet, then it's probably cute. There's many sentences that equate to nothing, like just a shot of water.
yeah.
It's like those. My mom has these little framed kind of writings that are just like,
oh sure,
the heart is where the home is.
Right.
Like
oh yeah,
it's,
Airbnb signs
like,
stuff. Yeah,
I feel insanely seen by like this movie because I also like. That parade looks exactly like the 4th of July parade.
I love the parade because it culminates in several things, a parade and a talent show. And the parade is just a random, as the whole movie has been in a way, a random mishmash of shit you could never predict. You're like, this group's parading by, now this group,
Yeah.
and it's like someone spun a wheel and it just landed on shit.
It's absurd. It's so silly.
That almost feels like a bit where it's just like, what's the weirdest shit we could think of?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't feel real, but it's the setting, the setups, and just like how everyone's acting, you know, these.
But then everyone
old men.
stares blankly at the back of the parade as it goes away for a really long time, and like that's funny to me.
That's very funny. Exactly. Yeah.
But that's also
Right.
how parades are. I like.
You're also Well, yeah. That's what you got to do. What are you gonna do? What
are you gonna do?
But you
guess
can
leave.
tell by the way it pops wide that the movie is telling you that's kind of dumb. Look at that.
It wants you to
Yeah,
look at it.
I
Yeah,
think.
exactly.
It wants you to look at that.
Same thing. Like,
aspect.
yeah, there's some of the times when he's in his car driving, he's like saying this poignant thing. Sometimes he's saying something that is just nothing, and sometimes he's driving along and then he like jerks the steering wheel around like a cartoon.
Yeah.
you realize the wheel is not connected. It's just a
It's
prop.
not. It's
You're
just a
like,
prop.
why? Why is it not connected?
It's
What is
so
going
funny
on?
though.
So
I
good.
remember as a kid because my dad showed me this growing up, just because we loved the band. That was the one joke that really slayed me as a kid. Was the
So
steering
good.
wheel just does not
Is
connected
it?
for one
It's
shot.
it's that
Is
it's that Colbert in Strangers with Candy. When he's typing, but he just like slams his hands like
Yeah, just
haphazardly
loosely
against the
slams his
keyboard.
hands
on
Yeah,
the
keyboard.
yeah. It's not
There's
even
no
like
joke
yeah.
here. Here's a bit. Yeah.
I'm just being
That's right.
delicately, loosely slinging my hands.
See,
It's
now
like, all right,
Abe's tone of voice brings up something that I think is actually totally valid, which is that in a way, if he presented me this script and said, it is a comedy, I'm submitting it to you because of Cracked and shit, this is a comedy, read it that way, I would think the script is way worse. You know what I mean? It almost skates by because it's multiple things, so I don't expect it to be the funniest. It's like Grand Theft Auto. Grand Theft Auto, you're like, well, of course the driving's not the best driving ever. It's Grand Theft Auto. It's not Gran Turismo that only does driving. So almost by doing like 6 things at once, I do think he lowers the bar because
You kind of forgive.
I'm generous with the film. I catch myself being generous way more than other films. I guess because there's a humbleness. It's like we keep saying, he successfully transmits the idea of being humble and unassuming. And you don't want to shit on something that's humble and unassuming. You want to be like, oh, what's up, buddy? You're acting kind of shy. Like, what's up with you? Yeah.
I know we just met, but I love you.
Because you're the weird, quiet one. I
you're
think
so
that's
weird.
interesting. Yeah.
He's champion of the ordinary, and that is something that I think, like, I
We
love
need those
that.
people for
It's
We
sure.
hard. Yeah,
need
it's hard
more of
to.
those.
It's hard to not like people who are championing that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely watch it, and I know what you're talking about. In my head, I kept just saying the phrase, like, he has, like, an inexplicable charm.
Yeah.
He's,
Oh yeah, the fact that it's him too saying a lot of these lines is like, well,
And his weird
it's
high
not-
voice.
It doesn't really pop on the page, but it does pop when he says it.
Oh, I
Yeah.
mean, and then you get John Goodman, who
One of his
There's-
first like things. He's
one of
done.
his first like major
kills
roles,
it.
and he's so good that so like on the page that line is, I like sad songs, they make me want to lie on the floor, Louis the Bear on the
Right.
floor, I guess I'll go now, sorry. But of course he plays the pauses so that it's devastating. You could have a bad actor really fuck that line up, but he slays because
Oh,
he's
yeah.
John Goodman.
Yeah, exactly.
So the acting is actually weirdly strong because he got such good people for it. Weirdos get good people.
He knew the
do.
assignment, which I think is a bigger statement than anything, because there's a lack of guidance and kind of message in the dialogue scenes on purpose, I think. Like John Goodman has this other scene with the woman who lies all the time, where she's talking about her tail. And Goodman is clearly like, what is this? What the hell? Because that's an obvious, like, that's what, as an actor, that's what
we
do.
call a beige flag.
Yeah, and it's but it's not passing judgment at the same time, and he seems really stuck, and that may just be a characterization. I think that's John Goodman doing a great job, but like that could have become the point of the scene, and it didn't. And it feels, that's why I made the Room comment before, and I didn't really mean it derogatorily. Like, it's like if the Room was much better because Tommy Wiseau wasn't like insanely egotistical, but rather kind of like someone who wanted to put love out into the world.
Yeah.
Because I don't have this reverence for David Byrne, and I've said that, but it feels like he's just paid a bunch of people to do these scenes and told them just to do it. no direction whatsoever.
Well,
I don't know
because
how
the Lotus
he accomplished
position
that.
date is clearly improv. I think there's a few dates that Lewis goes on where he told John Goodman to say whatever you want. It
Right,
has
and
that
I
kind
think
of
it's
pattern.
because he probably identified that John Goodman's really good, which is why John Goodman's arc is the only thing that's even an arc in this movie. It almost feels out of place.
It's the only thing that keeps it together.
Because it actually comes together and there's a story there. And I just think that I don't think David Byrne wanted to have direction in terms of how you are acting or responding to what they're saying. Just say the lines, please.
Slice of life.
which is
It's
a
slice of life. Yeah.
Right. It's just like your interpretation is the right interpretation.
And it's cool that he's based it on a bunch of what we call human interest stories, because it really is what he has as an interest in human beings. He's deeply interested in that.
It's almost like he's a tour guide, right? He's talking
More
about
than a
dinosaurs
preacher.
and saying,
Yeah.
like, look at over there.
Yeah, he's just bringing you over here. I'm going to bring you over here. And then they're going to do the thing. And I'm just
It's
gonna
a
let that
talent
happen.
show. The whole
Yeah,
movie is a
exactly.
talent show.
Yeah.
It's a talent
Yeah.
show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. And it strangely works. I mean, for a lot of people, I think it works.
Well, it definitely works because he also knows dumb stuff that just works. Like, for example, I watched this with my mom and she didn't get it for a second or think anything was funny or like it at all. But she thought the fact that it started and ended with a little girl whistling walking down the road was strangely beautiful. And I'm like, of course, that works. So that's going to make you feel that way in a way where it doesn't even have to be earned. It's just a kind
simple,
of
effective.
That,
That's what we all, would react to.
Yeah, and it
And I
does.
love
The
that
opening and
she's-
ending hit you for some reason.
And it makes it feel like even if the stuff in between was worse,
It makes it seem
it
like
would
it's
make it-
all part. Maybe it did have a theme. And it's
exactly.
like,
You see that last shot, and you're like, oh wow, they finished their movie. It's like the beginning,
Even
like
though
the
it's
movie's
totally
done.
inconsistent, right? There's no real culmination.
It almost tricks you into
wow.
thinking like they completed it. It's done. It's done. Yeah.
Yeah. And it also helps that she is captivating because she's a cute little weirdo as well. Because she
She's
does
a weird
like,
kid. Yeah.
yeah, like a lot of kids, but like she does this thing where she like changes up her at the end. She changes up her dance where she just starts walking like beelining to the left and right and left and right.
Mhm.
And it's just like that is a sudden and weird.
Well, he
thing
told
to
her do
suddenly
whatever you
change.
want. Clearly,
But it's
Yeah.
also like
Yeah.
you do get the feeling that you're like I'm actually watching like a kid play, like
Mhm.
kids who are not trying to do anything for me.
Oh, we haven't
you
even
know.
talked about the 4-H kids who go by.
Thank you.
They
I was gonna bring it up,
rocked.
yeah.
The
kicked
casting is
ass.
amazing. The little kid with the pigtails and the goggles on. It's like
So good.
I now understand the phrase "I want to eat her up," but all the 4-H kids. What an amazing group! Like what an amazing assortment of kids. Really something special.
Yeah. I mean, what a group.
I forget what song they
so
did,
much-
but it's one of the good ones.
Yeah, what was it? It was very good.
Yeah,
I forget.
it's one
But
of the.
I have nothing else to add.
Just,
But
just
thank
that
you for
was
bringing it up
good.
because I wanted to just say like that was really great.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
only other
that's
thing
really
I can
great.
add is I think they also were very smart to use other Talking Head songs, but instrumental or arrangements of them as the score. Because there's even additional Talking Head songs that you barely notice because the score is just instrumental Talking Head songs. And I think that also makes it feel tied together in a way that's very smart if you're going to write a movie that's barely tied together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey now.
Hey now. Yeah. Hey now. Good song.
Real good.
Clapping wood blocks and shit. Are we done, Abe?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. I could talk about this for days, but it would probably just go in circles, just because I'm trying to understand
It's
it.
some kind of magic because it doesn't execute on a particular idea, and it's easy to analyze something that executes on an idea. It's harder to analyze this, for sure.
He almost makes me angry because he makes a great argument for not having opinions.
Kind of does.
You know what I mean?
Well, for just being present, right? It's almost an argument for just being present and
like
chilling
if you
out,
follow my
going with
if
the
you
flow.
follow my thoughts, like just stream of consciousness. I watch like this movie or like a section of this movie, and I go like, yeah, I see that. But wait, are you not? Are you saying that to distract me from that, or are you trying to do? You trying to make me believe something? Nope, you're not doing any of that. Well, god damn it, now I'm the one who's trying to place like a meaning on this, And that
Right.
bothers me because I didn't want to be in this situation where I'm the guy who's like
Where I'm trying
demanding
harder
something
than
Yeah,
you
so now
do,
I'm the
man.
prick
Yeah.
trying to
So
say
now
that you
I'm
had
the
to
prick.
say something. Yeah.
And then I'm like, whoo, Abe, you got to step back. You're getting a little hot at David Byrne. It's cool. He can just
Well,
have.
Byrne,
He
you
can
know.
It's
just do his
okay
own
that you
thing.
don't. Yeah.
But
you don't
secretly
have
in my
to.
mind, I'm like, David Byrne, how dare you do this to me?
Now I'm thinking about stuff, but you don't want me to think about stuff.
You don't
so
want me
like,
to
what do
think,
you? Yeah.
was that your intention the whole time, you motherfucker? No, it wasn't. It
Meanwhile, David Byrne's over in the thrift store picking out a shirt that says "Only visiting this planet" for the kid that he hired.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're
Just
like, "Why that
eating-
shirt?" And he's like, "I don't know,
Why?
man. I don't know.
Probably
you tell
just
me."
eating a lollipop weird,
Yeah.
Right.
just doing something. I'm like, I don't approve of this at all, but you know.
Also,
what?
I am 6'3",
Well,
so
you
I
know.
can now genuinely say the line from this that I love of Lewis is, "I'm 6 feet 3 inches tall and maintain a very consistent panda bear shape."
Uh-huh. I thought you were gonna
Yeah, I
be
like
like,
that.
I was 6'3", so I could probably beat up David
I
Byrne.
could take
I
him.
could take
I
him.
could probably take him. Yeah, he's great. He's one of the. We should save David Byrne.
Mhm.
Keep David Byrne alive if you're around him
Everyone.
right now. Look out!
Yeah. But the David Byrnes of the world never
Mhm.
infuse
Protect
your
them. Protect
thoughts
them.
and let them be their own messes.
Keep on burning as the world is turning. Speaking of looking out, Cody, where can people look out for you and the things you make and bring into this world?
Oh, you can find me all over a couple of places. I'm on the websites that people get their social media fixes from. Dr. Mr. Cody is usually the handle. Some more news and even more news are the shows. One's on YouTube. Both are available for podcasts. And you can find my band, The Hot Shapes, on SoundCloud and Bandcamp if you prefer.
Nice.
And that's
Love
those
to
are the
hear
things.
it.
Abe, do you got
Way
any
to have-
spoilers for
Thank you for having me.
for our beans?
Yeah, man. Do I? We have an upcoming I'll show you mine if you show me yours this Friday for the Patreon crew. We have the next episode of Star Trek Next Futurama, and we have Escape from the Multiverse coming up. So that's your next, 3 pieces of content. We're probably going to take a short break for when Christmas happens. Just get ready for that.
but not
short
Thanksgiving.
but not Thanksgiving, and I think
Powering
short break
through.
honestly means like we're just not going to release on that Monday.
One episode,
so,
yeah.
but you know how it goes.
That's
We
right.
got a lot of stuff.
When does this drop?
This drops the 20th of November, 2023.
Then my novel comes out in 6 days, so if you're interested in a novel by me, look for that too. At the same spot,
Yeah.
patreon.com/smallbeans.
We'll be posting about it, I'm sure, on the socials and on the Patreon.
Mhm.
But that's it. If you want to have all that content and you're on the free feed, you'd be missing out on about half of what I just said.
And you're not as
Um,
cool as Jeff. Thank you,
You're
Jeff.
not as cool as
As
Jeff.
cool
Who
as
thank you
Jeff.
again, Jeff, for your, being a pal. That's all.
That is all.
Thank you for being a pal.
Thank you for being a pal, Cody. Thanks for being a pal.
Thank you for being a pal.
All right.
God damn it. All right. Thank you for being pals.
Thank you for being
Thank you.
pals.
Okay, we're all
For
thanked.
being pals.